Thank you so much for tuning in to Coffee Talk with Mel. We are here again from the Coffee Grinder in Warwick, Rhode Island. And today's special guest is Mike Sweeney, owner of House Doctor Home Inspection. He has been working as a licensed home inspector in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut for the past 4 years and ran a commercial business prior to. So Mike, thanks for being on Coffee Talk with Mel today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to ask, how in the world did you get into home inspecting to begin with?
So the initial time when I was a first-time home buyer, needed an inspection. And that was literally when I first found out about home inspections.
Okay. Yeah, because you don't think about it, right, until you buy a house.
No, nobody going through high school, growing up, nobody says, hey, you should be a home inspector. So first-time home buyer, needed a home inspection, and Don, the previous owner of House Doctor.
Love
which
Don.
You know
Shout out to
very
Don.
Well. Yeah. And my dad used him prior, so my dad's like, hey, use this guy. I called and make sure I got Don, and that was, I saw the whole process and kind of the business side of me said, this kind of makes sense as a business, and not too many people are doing it.
Or doing it well.
Doing it well. So, and that's one thing. I've never been on an inspection other than with Don. So, like, I don't know.
Oh, so you had never
other
seen.
stories.
Oh, that's right.
So that's where, like,
Didn't even think about that.
I hear horror stories all
Yes.
over. But that was the first time where I was like, hey, this kind of makes sense. And it actually wasn't for another 4 or 5 years that I called Don up about being a home inspector. But that initial take, and I'm sure my wife can attest to it, like, I've mentioned it time and time again, like, I think I could do that. I think I could do that. And then one day it just got to the point where it's like,
I
yeah,
can
need
do this.
That's it. That's it.
Well, that's great that she was supportive, because I know changing jobs, you know, is not easy, and especially professions completely.
Yep, for sure.
So I came across Don through a friend in 2006 or 2007, and he found the main beam was completely covered up with, on 4 sides with wood, which is kind of weird, right? So he's like, let's peel back. The whole entire main beam was completely damaged by termites. And I mean, I knew something was wrong because the floor was like this, right? But they wanted the house. And I'll tell you, that was the first time I met him, and from that point on, I used him moving forward.
Yeah.
So
I hear that story from so many realtors, everybody in the field. And that, before I even called Don up, I talked to other realtors that I knew, just to make sure he was who he says he was, and like what you see and everything, and nothing but great things about House Doctor, about Don. So it was a no-brainer. Like, when I finally made that decision, call Don up and see if I would be somebody he'd want to train.
And imagine 4 years later, and you are now currently the owner of House Doctor Home Inspection. How amazing and how fast that happened.
It was quick. Like, the day-to-day, just like anything, day-to-day, it seemed like it took forever, but you look back and that quick. And that was actually something that I brought up to him the day I asked him to train me, was buying the business out.
You were planting the seed.
And
I like that.
It was something that he didn't say 100% sure, but it was a handshake deal. Like, hey, you could be the guy. And
if you do X, Y, and Z and you do the right thing.
Exactly.
Because I want to make sure my business goes to somebody that's doing the right thing.
It's his and Amy's life work that they've done for 20 years.
Love Amy.
So it's, between her and now my wife doing the phones, everything, a great team.
Just a win-win.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. So, like, that was the plan from the beginning, but it's never final until
it happens.
So that was, we were very excited. I think it was a win-win all the way around. Don's still with us. Amy's still with us. And
I know.
we're
I still
looking to
call
grow.
and I use Don. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no. I want to build the business up, so then as we bring on more inspectors and everything, people don't just look at House Doctor as Mike Sweeney or as just Don. This is how we train everybody. This is the standard that we bring to every real estate transaction, not just, oh, that's Mike. Or
So
Don.
you have a standard operating procedure, so every inspector knows how they need to communicate to clients, agents, etc.
Yep, because we get calls, and that's kind of known throughout the home inspection industry across the country, where it's like that agent uses you, not the
100%,
business.
yeah.
And it does fluctuate because some people have different personalities and everything. So some people jive better with certain inspectors.
Yeah, like you or Chris or Don,
Yeah.
and it just all depends.
But that's why it's also good to have a variety of different people, because now you can relate. You have a first-time home buyer that's younger. Hey, maybe a younger inspector could relate better. Like
When you did like Colette and Nick's home inspection
Yep.
over here,
Yep.
I remember, you know, they received you so well, just on the same level. And that was actually a really good home inspection.
Yeah.
Imagine?
Yeah. Some are good, some are really not good.
Yeah, exactly.
But we can't say that. We
No.
just present the facts.
Exactly.
And this is the house. So, but we were excited to take the business over and looking to really, really grow it the right way. Don and Amy built a solid foundation, word of mouth, doing the right thing for 20 years. And I think now injecting social media and the technology that we have nowadays just to elevate that and bring a bigger standard, higher standard to the inspection industry as a whole.
Well, and there's so many changes, or there had been so many changes, even in the past 5 years, 10 years. I know in 2025, one of the things that we're dealing with is the electrical piece, which we'll get a little bit into later. But I want to kind of go back. So you had your first home inspection with Don, and then your dad had used them. I think your grandfather had used them.
Yep.
And I know you had bought a few pieces of property along the way. You know, what was your, you know, best home inspection, you personally, and like the worst one that you saw? And it was obviously the house, but
One of the things that kind of the best scenario was during my first home inspection. And this is on the other side, not as an inspector, but just buying
as
a property.
consumer. Yeah.
And at that point, my dad actually moved to Florida, and Don knew that, so he knew my dad wasn't around and stuff. And buying your first house is kind of like lean on your parents.
Devastating.
As we know, most
so
parents
scary.
are going to the inspection and everything, and so you could tell Don cared. He took the extra time. He went through how the heating system works, how this works, and I forgot most of the stuff he said, but I knew how he came across and how he made me feel, and like, oh wow, like he actually cares. Like you can tell, and that stuck with me. So like now when I'm going on inspections as an inspector, I always keep that in the back of my head, like, how did Don make me feel at that first inspection? Because it's an overwhelming process because it's the first time you're doing it. So just like anything in life, but that was like the best feeling, I guess, for a home inspection, was like, all right, this guy actually cared. The report, everything was top notch. So, and back then they printed everything out on the spot.
Oh, I remember.
So like I never had to deal with that. So like everything I've done was on the computer, digital. Hey, we're good to go. He tells me stories, handwriting stuff. And
Oh, yeah. I still see inspectors handwrite stuff on yellow lined paper. I almost died at this one home inspection. I mean, the guy was I think it was from Connecticut, and he must have been 9,000 years old. And I'm like, I can give you a better inspection than this guy can. But it's so important on who you choose to use.
Yes, and that's it worked for years, but now with all the technology, there's really no reason.
You have to change.
That's it.
I hate change. I'm over 40. I don't like all of this social media and all this stuff, but I'm learning, or I have my, admin do it. So it's like one or the other.
That's it.
So I want to know, if you could reach a bunch of first-time home buyers out there that are listening today, what is the number one thing that you would say, A, before they even get to the home inspection, and B, during the home inspection? What should they think of or be aware of?
So before the home inspection, it's critical. Obviously, we see the difference with an experienced agent that they're working with, where you guys are going in properties, maybe 3, 4, 5. I've heard up to, somebody said they went to 60 properties with their agent, and then the agent looks at me like,
they did.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm poor. Like, I'm not even making $1 on this.
I was like, oh my God. But that's what you do. You do the best thing for your clients. And that's first and foremost, because a lot of times when you guys are going through those properties on an open house, or you're looking at it before the home inspection, experienced agents can point things out that say like, hey, just so you know, because it's an older house, this, and this can be present, or so don't be surprised when you get to the inspection.
Thank you, Mike, for saying that.
We see it though, because there's certain things that, and they're out in the open, or things that an experienced agent knows, and we see time and time again, like, we backed out of this one, or we didn't even put an offer on this one because of this, and this. So that's, I guess, first and foremost before the inspection, and then leading up to the inspection, during the inspection, it's really just being present, and then getting your questions down if you have any. For first-time home buyers, most people, they don't know what to ask. We still will ask you if you have any questions, but for the most part, first-time home buyers, they look at us like, I don't even know
Like
what to
nothing.
ask.
Yeah, like just, I don't know.
And so we at least tell them, hey, as we go through, questions pop up, ask away. That's why we're here. We're here to work for you. And no matter what, everything we do cover will be on the report. Pictures, detail, description, everything will be on there. So really during the home inspection, obviously time, take measurements, all this stuff like of the house, but to really learn, we want to show you where shut-off valves are, the filters, the heating system, how to service that, stuff like that. So kind of just be all ears, pay attention.
And don't get scared and nervous. Just realize there's a solution to every problem. It's just about what problems you're willing to deal with, or maybe if the other party is willing to somehow rectify that. Because let's be real, all houses they sell, right? No matter what condition that they're in. And sometimes a property can be in a family's and within a family since the 40s, 50s, or the early 1900s, and it's never had a home inspection on it. And those are always the shockers for the sellers, because they're like, well, my house and my grandfather built this house and used the best of everything. It's like, well, that was 1940 and it's 2025, so codes and everything have changed. And my favorite is when they say there's no knob and tube.
And it's right there.
I literally had one, right? And they said we got rid of all the knob and tube. There's no knob and tube, blah, blah. Literally within the first 15 minutes of the home inspection, Don was like, and here's the knob and tube wiring going directly into the panel. And, it was something that we negotiated as a quote unquote as is sale, but we were going off the disclosure that people said.
Exactly.
And there's a thing, knob and tube, they don't use it anymore. Is it really scary? It can be.
Can be.
But you can fix it and you can change it. And there's always a solution. So I always tell people when we're going through an inspection, if there's something that's really alarming, ask more questions about it. It may not be as alarming as you think it is. When people are like, these ungrounded outlets, I need to pull out of the transaction. It's like, I've been around for a while.
We can work around it.
Ungrounded outlets is literally not the worst thing.
Yeah, I've heard somebody backing out of an inspection from on the back end. Typically, we don't stay along with the transaction.
Of course, but you hear realtors. We like to.
And the ventilation fan in the bathroom was venting into the attic.
80% of home inspections.
8 out of 10, they're in there. They backed out because of that. Whether that was the real case or not, but to prove the point, people get scared because of the unknown.
Exactly.
And is this a big deal? Is it not a big deal? I don't know. So that's where the home inspector and their agent come into play of walking them through the process. And
so having professionals around you is so, so, so important. As a first-time home buyer or repeat buyer, I bought investment properties. Who I always call to look at them? I buy it as is, but I'm going to have Don run through it. So I know what I need to fix and what I can kind of push off. What doesn't really matter.
We have investors that call us too, and we look at things differently.
Of course.
We're going through as the inspector, we're looking at the house as a whole, and then even investors that they're buying a house with a septic, they'll have us at least test the septic because, they plan on ripping the house to the studs anyway. But we still go in and do those things. So now that you just brought up septic systems, let's kind of get into a little bit about what a septic system is, because I feel as though, I've been selling real estate for 20 years. I know what a septic is. I know what a cesspool is. I know, the sand filtration systems. I know what sewers are. I know what a sewer ejection pump is. But let me tell you, in 2005, when I first got licensed, I didn't know the difference between any of it. So we'll start with cesspools. Quick. I love cesspools. Just kidding. I'm not allowed to say that. It'll be a quick segment, I guess, with the cesspool, because in Rhode Island, they want you to transition those out of use within 12 months of the property sale. Yes. Nobody is coming to regulate that. Except Portsmouth. That is true. Yep. And with the cesspool, it's pretty much you have stacked stone, brick, masonry block, and it seeps into the ground. And you can kind of see why they want to get rid of that. Ew. So they want you to transition that to a septic, and that's a solid tank in the ground, whether it's concrete, some sort of plastic or anything, but it's a solid tank that you want to get pumped every 2 to 3 years, and it's built to the size of the dwelling, whether 2-bedroom, 4, 5-bedroom plus, with a leach field that leaches out the effluent, so pretty much all the liquids and stuff into the proper way.
And now, while you're talking about that septic, I don't mean to interrupt, but different errors, they did different containers. I mean, I just did a new construction, and I saw the container, and I was like, wow, I've never seen that septic container before. So I think they've transitioned over time. So I think something that, especially first-time home buyers need to really understand is that in the 70s it was this, in the 90s it was this, and in the 2000s it was this. And what's the difference, and should I be nervous about anything failing?
Yeah. So they did. I remember when I was training with Don, and a lot of these systems now, because they failed, you're not going to see as many that are older like that. But I remember when I was training with Don, he brought me to an inspection that he did a couple weeks prior, and it was a steel container, like concrete. Instead of a concrete tank, it was steel. So that was the one and only time I've seen that, and I've tested probably hundreds, thousand inspection septics, but that was something that was a normal practice back in the day that they wouldn't do today.
Correct.
And then as time went on, even like DEM in Rhode Island, their record keeping has gotten better.
So much better.
From the 70s, 80s, 90s.
It was like, what? Is it after 92 it's online, or after 95? I forget.
So there's some...
That still aren't.
Yeah.
Like that Burrillville, Gloucester
did we
area.
really need to do it? But from like the early 2000s, for the most part, you can find. And if you do more digging, I'm sure it's there somewhere, but it's not as easy as newer construction nowadays.
Correct.
But with septics over time as well, it was just one pipe into the tank, so that's the inlet from the house, and then an exit pipe going into leach field. And most of the time during a septic inspection, you'd have access to one cover.
Okay.
And we'd put our mirror in there, check that out. As time goes on, you'll have access to 2 covers, the inlet and the exit. And then they also started putting what's called an effluent filter. In the early 2000s, they started doing that so it catches the smaller particles before it goes.
I've seen those when people don't
they
clean them.
it.
There was one not too long
they don't
ago.
wanna go in there.
It was so gross. I was like, ew.
Yep. And
that can back up because it clogs.
Now you have a solid filter, not one that allows anything to go through. Now it could back up into the house. So it's
extremely important.
You want to keep up on that. Typically every year you want to clean that out. So
and one great thing about your company is you guys put all of that information in a great little packet so you can understand the septic system, see how it works and operates, and know what to do. I mean, they're not going to come out every yearly and clean it, but you have to put that on your calendar to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that we have all that in the report, like you were saying. Cesspools we won't test.
Understandable.
Just because they need to be replaced. And that 12-month thing, that's actually only in Rhode Island. Connecticut allows cesspools still. And I've heard of
the Wild Wild West.
I heard stories where in Massachusetts you need the Title V.
Title V is great.
So the sellers typically provide that, and I've heard of cesspools passing Title V. So that's kind of individual state-wise, and then septics we do a flow test. So depending on how many bedrooms will be how many
gallons
exactly that we flow through there to make sure that it's functioning properly.
So on a septic system, on average, would you say it lasts 40 years, 60 years, 20 years?
So typically, like you look up the life expectancy of a septic, it's going to be 2030 within that realm.
Interesting.
So we've seen some a lot older, and we see some a lot younger that don't last those. Yeah. So a lot of it is the usage. Are you just flushing
the land too? I'm sure.
Yeah, the land is big, and then are you just flushing everything down the drain? Because sometimes we open the cover and that's what it looks like. So
I've heard stories.
So I've seen action figures down there.
Stop it.
Yeah, like those flushable wipes.
They're not flushable wipes. Can we just stop? Can we just tell the whole community toilet paper goes in the toilet? That's it. I don't care what you're on. Toilet paper. That's it. End of story. Continue.
I've seen probably thousands cigarette butts. So
They expand.
But they're just flushing them down the toilet time and time. And the homeowner was like, "Oh, we just got this pump like 8 months ago." So that was just 8 months worth of. I'm like, oh, it was packed with cigarette butts.
Oh my gosh.
So, but yeah, it was.
So again, it doesn't matter what it is. So, it's not scary buying a house with a septic system. just know what you're getting yourself into. It's probably going to be the same cost to maintain a septic system that it is going to be for your sewer usage or something similar like I know Cranston, your sewer usage is usually typically about $400 a year.
Yep.
I know in Warwick it's combined with your water bill. So
Correct.
it all depends. I mean, no matter what, you're going to have to maintain that sewer water. No
or
matter
pay for it or
maintain it.
that's it.
Exactly.
Yep.
So now sewers, everybody, of course, wants to be on sewers.
Yep.
Now, it was a few years into my real estate career that I came across a sewer ejection pump, and I had never seen those before. So can you just touch base a little bit about what that is?
So we see, obviously, those will be in the basement of a home for the most part. And because if, say, you're standing up and the main waste line is, say, chest height going out of the house, but you have a basement bathroom that all the plumbing is lower than that height. So you need a pump to bring that waste from the floor to that waste line going outside.
Well, that's common sense.
So
that totally makes sense.
The pump comes in handy. We see it installed improperly many times over.
More times than not.
Yep. But we want to make sure we hear that pump kick on multiple times during the inspection as we're running water through it. And recently, I don't know if it was just something in the air or what, but we've seen a lot of waistline backups happening. So
with the ejection pumps,
in general.
Just in general,
yeah.
Wow.
And a lot of times you have a sewer clean out going outside, so that's the last stop if you ever need to unclog or anything like that. So we started actually, this month we started offering sewer scope cameras.
That's great.
So we, like, instead of kind of wiping our hands saying like, oh, we hear the backups, let's provide the additional service. And
it's smart because insurance doesn't cover that.
And it can be $10,000, $15,000 if there's, I've heard stories, somebody putting a camera down there and it's filled with rocks.
I believe it.
It's completely collapsed. There's tree roots in there.
The tree roots.
And it's only so much that any inspector can do.
Of course.
Without running a camera down there. We can run all the water we want, but it's not under a normal daily use of a family with toilet paper and God knows what else.
Yeah.
But that can get caught up in the tree roots and everything like that, and then it may take a little while, and then you have a backup. And then they call the inspector like, you didn't catch this.
Well,
but it wasn't happening during the inspection. We did the functional
You
flow
did your
test.
due diligence.
Exactly. So it's something as an additional service that we want to provide for people getting home inspections. So
kind of a funny story. I had this house in Foster as a listing, and the buyers came, and this was back in like when the bottom of the market where it was hard to sell houses.
Yeah.
And I remember the homeowner, it was her brother's house, and she said, "Oh, it's a septic system in the backyard," and I was like, okay, but it looked like a dug well, but whatever. I wasn't going to question it. You know, I'm not a well or a septic professional. I just have seen what I've seen and I hear what I hear. So they had their inspector come out and the inspector's like, this is the dug well. And I was like, surprise, surprise. And then they're like, do you know where it's exposed? Because nowadays, right, before you get to the inspection, you tell the agents, hey, the cover has to be exposed or you could be there for hours looking for it.
Yeah.
On that note, they had two companies come out, two different septic and cesspool companies come out, and nobody could locate it. They called a third person.
Yep.
And, I mean, they were doing the camera down the thing. They couldn't find it.
Yep.
And they had, like, the little...
like metal
you know what I'm
detector.
talking, metal detector thing.
Yeah.
They were doing that. And this one guy came out, and he's like, wait. He looked at the shed. They put the shed on top of the cesspool. It wasn't even a septic system on a one-bedroom house.
Oh yeah.
On top, they put the
You
shed.
said that was Foster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see some like that explains it right there. But in Foster at this, the well instead of them putting a building over the septic, they put a building over the well.
No.
And it failed the well test. It needs to be drilled deeper.
Oh.
But now you have to, and it was a 2-car garage. So
You got to take that down, or you have to do a new well.
They re-drilled a well separately.
Well, yeah,
separate
because an artesian well might be like 10 to 15 grand nowadays, whereas a 2-car garage like 50 or 100 grand, depending.
But it took us
crazy.
like quite a while to find. We're like, where is this well? And literally, it was under the garage.
Wow. But
Crazy.
that's what it is. I mean, as a first-time home buyer, second-time home buyer, or just as a homeowner in general, you should know these things.
Yep.
You should be aware. So when you're, even if it's a rental property, you should be aware of everything, where everything is in case of an emergency.
Exactly. Yep.
And on the sewer thing, I actually did not know that that's a new service, but that's really
Yes.
good to
Yep.
know. Now, the other thing in Warwick, a lot I've seen, and probably a couple of other communities, is the outside. I think it's called a grinder pump.
Yep.
The
Yep.
one with the green
Yep.
cover. So describe what that is a little bit. And should people be nervous? Should they be scared? Or it's totally normal?
So that is similar to the ejection pump, just
Okay.
for, because what that is used for, and a lot we see it in different developments for the most part, because the waistline for the town is higher at that point. So a similar
Okay.
scenario with the chest height waistline going out of the house, it's just a larger version of that.
That makes
so
sense.
that neighborhood is lower than where the water needs to go, so it pumps it up.
I just went on a listing appointment yesterday,
Yep.
and they had a brand new grinder pump, and they had just
Yeah.
connected to the sewers. So I was like, I know there's the ejection pump inside and the grinder pump outside. So I was just trying to figure out which, what did what. But that makes sense because looking back on it, the waistline was here and the road was up here.
Yep.
So that's what it is. It was going out, getting pumped up,
Yeah.
and then going
And
out.
I've seen some houses, brand new construction too, where they need that set up, and it's actually a tank in the basement, like not under the concrete.
I've
It's
seen that
in the
once.
tank.
Wow.
Yep. Yep. So and
It's just
that's
amazing how different things are.
used for that scenario. And a lot of times as well, those have an alarm system hooked up to it. So if it fails, the
It goes
alarm
off.
goes off. It doesn't get backed
Backed
up
up.
into the house. Yep.
Now, you mentioned new construction, so I'm just going to topic jump right now.
Yep.
Is obviously new construction. A lot of first-time home buyers like the new construction because everything's shiny new, and it's like, okay, all right, I sign a contract and I buy the house. Do you suggest having a home inspection on a new construction? Why or why not? And what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
For sure. With new construction, we hear that time and time again, where it's like, everything's new. What could go wrong? And no matter if it's a brand new construction, older house, there's still a list of stuff. Again, we look at things as a whole. You have your electrician, your plumber, this person, that person, and they might be doing their job, but now you have all the other contractors going in. Did they follow up? Did they come back? Did they finish this? So a lot of times you're not going to see the corroded waistline because it's brand new, but when you're looking outside the roof and you notice there's no plumbing vent going through the roof because the plumber didn't come back and actually put it through the roof, that's something that could cause problems down the road for sure.
Yeah.
But if you didn't get a home inspection, you wouldn't have
Know that.
And things as we go, and at the same time as we go through that house, you're gonna learn all the different components of that house. Where if you don't get the inspection, you'll learn it over time, but don't you want to know what you're buying?
Yeah,
And
1,000%.
here's the shutoff valves. Here's the maintenance schedule on this. Here's that. And hopefully there's not a large amount of items that need to be repaired, but it definitely comes up. And then, like we were talking about on social media, you see some horror stories with new construction. Framing wise, it like this house is gonna fall down type work. I haven't seen that personally around here.
Rhode Island
But-
and New England, we tend to be a little better than maybe the South
Yeah,
or somewhere
yep.
in the middle of the country, but
Word spreads quick
more
around
laws.
here.
Yeah,
That too.
Isn't
Like,
that the truth?
that's,
Everybody
like,
knows everybody. Everybody's
that's
got a
it.
connection.
Yeah.
And less than the Kevin Bacon connection, right? So it's interesting though because with new construction, and I've heard many agents say it, and it might have even come out of my mouth at one point in time, is that you have new construction, so the town is going to go in and they're going to issue a certificate of occupancy, or otherwise known as the COO. So that means the town building inspector, the town plumber, the building inspector is going to go off and sign off on all those different components.
Yep.
So especially in the height of the multiple offer market and stuff, it's
Yep.
been, and I'm sure you've seen it, people waiving inspections, not just on new construction, but on like regular houses too, and I just think in today's day and age, it's just so valuable no matter what. But what would you say to those agents that are saying that?
So pretty much I'm sure if we all sit around long enough, we all have horror stories of different things about home inspections that came up over the years. And you just never know until you have an inspector go through everything. And not to throw any one inspector under the bus, like as far as like town inspectors or anything like that. But I've been at houses, I've worked with plenty of contractors. I'm waiting for the inspector from the town to come by, give us the okay for the electrical. They come by, they just slap the sticker on the panel. They didn't take the panel off. They didn't look at it, yeah. Like, and
it happens in every industry.
Yeah.
We're not calling anyone out.
Exactly. And so that's where, and most people in the construction, they would agree with that. Like,
of course.
They've seen it happen time and time again. And we're just that second set of eyes going in. And if everything's good, awesome.
That's great.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Like that, we're not going in there and like, hey, I'm finding something.
Yeah, you're not trying to go in there and kill a deal.
Exactly.
I mean, we all are working together.
Education. And the more you know, hey, the better you're going to feel comfortable buying the biggest purchase of most people's life.
Yes, 100%.
Yep.
100%.
Exactly.
And that's why it's a small investment at the beginning to make sure, and I always say this when I have a buyer consultation, to make sure that you're not getting a lemon of a house.
Yeah.
I mean, to spend $1,000 or a little bit over $1,000 if it's with, you know, a well inspection and a septic inspection. I mean, you just want to test for everything.
That's it.
And on that note, tell us a little bit about wells, why you should have a water quality test, a water flow test, and I'm a believer in having the well water tested for radon too.
Yeah. So from my understanding as well is a lot of loan officers and products on the loan side require the well to be tested with certain water quality.
VA, FHA, they have to have that water quality test.
Time and time again, that's happened where we tell the buyers, hey, you should be testing for this. And like, oh no, like they don't want to spend the money. They get to the closing table and like, oh, where is this? Exactly. And now you're going to delay that closing because of something we could have done in the lab
30 days ago.
Exactly. But it's I feel like nowadays more people are health conscious as well.
Yes.
So they want to know what's in the water. They hear all this stuff going on TikTok and everything else, like, what's in my water? What's in my water? Like, so more people are now kind of conditioned to get it tested. But it's something, before you buy the house, that's something you can negotiate with your agent and everything like that.
Of course. And the homeowner probably doesn't even know.
And that's the thing. 2 days ago, I tested, a homeowner called. They just wanted to get the water tested. They've been in that house for 25 years. Oof. But they found out their neighbor tested high in a certain item. And they were like, we want to test for that. And so we did a full panel and everything, but they've been there for years, and they were like, that it really never dawned on us. But if they were to sell it, most likely the buyer would hopefully get the water quality, and now they're at a crossroad, like, oh crap, we were drinking this water for 25 years, but they just didn't know. So you bring it to their attention, and then now, going forward, say you didn't buy the house, now it's disclosed, here, this is what's going on. Somebody's going to do something because that's drinking water.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
So, and filtration systems, stuff like that, they're not cheap. It's not $200-$300.
Oh, the reverse osmosis, if you have to do that for the whole house?
Do thousands.
Oh, so, I mean, I had a house in, I think it was East Greenwich, West Greenwich line over there. And is it beryllium, or what's that word? It's a B word. And where you got to do the reverse osmosis. And these particular people, they did the reverse osmosis at the drinking water.
Yeah, okay.
So they just did it at that because that's all that they had to do. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and then they had it retested and everything was fine. But I mean, those systems, if you have to do the whole house or water softener or even like the light for the radon.
UV.
Oh.
Well, the radon too. So you have radon gas in the water, and essentially the machine essentially like punches the air, so then the bubbles get released. So it's like
aerator.
A container. It's like a container that you see.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've seen those, and even during inspections as well, like we've seen those installed completely improperly because you don't need to be a plumber to install those.
Isn't that crazy?
It
Isn't
falls
that the most bizarre thing you've ever heard?
So like most plumbers will do the job, but like you don't technically have to be. And at least that's from my understanding from talking with plumbers and everything, where it's like, oh, so that's why I see a lot of them not installed
right.
So, but yeah, we do a flow test in Rhode Island, Connecticut for the wells. Connecticut, it's based off of the amount of bedrooms. For the flow test in Rhode Island, it's a 2-hour flow test. We want to make sure you don't run out of water, the pressure doesn't drop, cut in half.
I feel like Rhode Island does it well.
So it's pretty crazy because there is no. It's more like the Wild Wild West with the wells. The wells. Septics, we have a defined system.
Guidelines,
this is what we do.
Everything that you have to do.
Well, you talk to a few well companies and it's like, you can do it this way, you can do it that way. You don't want to do it this way though, but like, so it's gray
more,
area.
Yeah, more gray than black and white.
Massachusetts, they have their standards, but we're not equipped to do the well flows in Mass yet. But they require, it's a 4-hour test, 1,200 gallons of water. So it's double everything Rhode Island.
Wow.
But so there's other equipment that you can do to kind of teach and learn about the well for the buyers and everything like that. But something we're not equipped to do currently.
But I feel like most southeastern Massachusetts, or I know anyway, for myself being a real estate broker in the state of Massachusetts, I kind of do just kind of like that roundabout Rhode Island area, and most of them are connected to city water. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
You're Attleboro, you're North Attleboro, you're, some places in Rehoboth, but that's interesting to know about Mass. Mass is kind of, I actually like how Mass does the offer to purchase first, and then you have the home inspection, and then you go on a purchase and sales agreement. I wish Rhode Island would adopt that because I feel like that's such a great process, whereas in Rhode Island, we sign a purchase and sales agreement, we put a large deposit down, and then you have 10 days to have that home inspection and negotiate everything, which can become a pressure cooker at time for people. Trying to get inspectors out together at that time, as well as, if you want to bring a contractor back, or let's say you...
Or electrician.
I was just going to say, let's say you look at the electrical panel. I'm lying, he's not. Let's say, the plumbing or whatever, and you want to get a plumber out to get the pricing and the estimate of something. I mean, it's really a short period of time.
Big time.
But I mean, I have to say one thing about House Doctor, including yourself, Don and Chris, is that when you take somebody through for the home inspection, you are really like, okay, these are the things that came up. There are solutions. There are, I'm sure your real estate agent has X, Y, and Z, and so on and so forth. And there's things that come up that were maybe not code in 1968, because the house is from 1968, which you have to say, okay, it's a 1968 house. It's not code to 2025 standards and such. But I really feel like there's certain things that people really have to hone in on. And I had an inspection with Don, and it was not too far away from here. It was a super cute little ranch, and it was a buyer client of mine. And we got there, and he was really, really nervous, right? Because, I mean, it's scary. Buying a house by yourself for a few $100,000. Now you got this huge loan to pay back over a 30-day period. Plus, you have to deal with any repairs that come up. So he was a little nervous to begin with. So, but, we go there, and Don set up the radon machine, as you guys do the radon first. And then he started hitting the sills. And every single sill he could access, it went straight through. So I could see, like, my client was just getting white, and then more white, and then sweating, and then more white. And I'll never forget, I looked at him, and I said, hey, if you want to stop this home inspection, I feel pretty confident Don will be like, let's cut it, and he'll give you a discount, or whatever that looks like, because he was only there for 30 minutes. And so he was like, because it was 3 out of the 4 sills. I mean, for a contractor, that's one thing. They can figure it out. But most of the time, you're either going to have to lift that house up and replace all the sills, or you're going to have to somehow sister it or do something. So, and I felt so bad because the listing agent, I think it was like her second listing. Like, she was so nice. And so, I went to Don. I was like, hey, Don. He's like, no problem. I totally understand. I was like, get the radon machine, get out of here, you know? And I was like, Jeff, go outside with Don. And then I went to the listing agent, and I said, look, this is the scenario. I'd rather just be upfront and honest with you and the seller in this moment and not drag anything out. I said, this is the issue. I said, I got a guy, because it's Rhode Island, right?
I was just about to say
got a guy. So I gave her a referral, and that guy actually went out and he fixed it, and she resold it to somebody else, which is totally fine. And my client ended up getting another house in another area, which he's so happy in.
Imagine he didn't get an inspection.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, imagine not getting an inspection, and now all of a sudden your house starts going like this, and you have no idea why. Because the people had owned it for 40 years.
Oh yeah.
They had no idea.
Yeah, you're
None.
walking through your house. Your day-to-day life's busy. You're
Of
not thinking,
course.
oh, termites.
No.
Like, you don't think that.
On your sills? No. I mean,
No.
they had a whole finished portion. He
Yep.
couldn't even access one side of it. So
Yeah.
that was another,
We've been doing a lot of pre-listing inspections. So we go in. The people, they've owned the house for X amount of years, and a couple weeks ago, I found active termites, and the homeowners were like, "Oh my god!" Like,
we had no
wait,
idea. But how would they know?
the whole half of the main beam, but where it was, you could tell they just put storage stuff there, so they never accessed
so they
that
never
area.
saw it, yeah.
And but now with the pre-listing, now it gives them time to either repair it or they can
Disclose
price accordingly. And hey, here's what's going on. We don't have the funds.
This
to
is
fix
the
it.
estimate
This
that
is
we
what we're
got.
doing.
This is what you can do.
So you got many options when it comes to the pre-listing, and we've been doing quite a few of them.
I think it's really smart, especially when homeowners have owned the home for an extended period of time, or the family
Yep.
member built it, or so on and so forth. Because that's where I feel like the most
Deals fall through.
Yeah,
Something
because
like that.
the sellers don't understand. And like, I was just on a listing appointment not too long ago, and it's a husband and wife, and they're downsizing, and none of the children want the house. And so his parents built the house, and it was, I think, built in 1947.
Yeah.
And I said, look, there's going to be a home inspection on this house, and it's going to come up with probably 50 to 60 items.
Yeah.
I said, I just want you to be prepared because a buyer is going to get scared. And I always say you can either have it pre-inspected, or you can wait for the buyers to have the inspection, or we can just disclose what you know, because let's be real, you've been living there forever.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And I always try to tell my clients, always be honest. It's, you know what I mean? Because
It's gonna come out. in
it's
the
going to
wash.
come out
That's
no
it.
matter what. So
Yep.
if you can combat it from the get-go, it's going to be way easier to deal with, 1,000%.
And from my understanding too, so say that seller discloses X, Y, and Z, or the home inspection, they disclose it. If that buyer decides to do an inspection again, can they back out because of items that were on that?
So on a
disclosed?
on a technicality, Rhode Island changed its purchase and sales agreement. Don't quote me. I don't
Yep.
know if it was 08, 10, or 12, somewhere around that time
Yeah.
frame. They changed the purchase and sales agreement from structural and health and safety concerns
Okay.
to you have a 10-day period and you can back out. So basically,
okay.
not that a buyer's going to want to do this, but
Yeah.
let's say I say, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm going to buy your house. Here's 10 grand. I'm having a home inspection. It's subject to that contingency.
Yep.
Even if I say I'm having the home inspection for as is purposes, but I still have that option to back out. Okay. And I
Okay.
always make sure I write that out, even
Yeah,
though it
yeah.
states it, just because you
Now
want to
it's
just
in
be overprotected.
extra writing.
Exactly. Because it's never, unless it's in writing, it doesn't matter. That's a fun fact for real estate agents and any consumers out there. And I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
The 10-day period.
Oh, the 10-day
back-
period,
yep.
yeah. So basically, you can go into a house and be like, I don't really like the wallpaper, and back out of the agreement after the home inspection.
Okay.
So, but who wants to spend $1,000 on a home inspection just to back out of an agreement and put
Exactly.
20 grand down as a deposit? I mean,
Yep.
99.999% of people are not going to do that.
Yep.
But on a technicality, you can really get out for any reason.
Okay.
Now, once that 10-day period, which is exclusive of Saturdays and Sundays and holidays, so
Yep.
it's just business days.
Exactly.
If you're outside of that period, you can no longer request anything, and you can't back out of the agreement.
Okay. Yep.
So
Yep.
that is very important for real estate agents. Again, going
Yeah.
back to what you had said, how important it is to use a professional, experienced agent that knows
Exactly.
about homes.
Yeah.
Because, like me, I'm kind of crazy, and I'm like, okay, we got to make sure.
Yeah.
And I always am like, all right, we had the home inspection. Let's review it.
Yep.
I'll give you 24 hours. Let's have a conference call. Let's go over
That's
what
it.
it is, see if there's a solution. If the solution is X, Y, and Z, let's request that.
Yep.
Because you don't want to go to the sellers in the 11th hour on day 9 and be like, I want $33,000 off the asking price. Because you want to
Yeah.
know what they're going to tell you?
Nope.
Buy. Know?
We've had people call to schedule inspections, and they're already at day 8. It's like, what'd you do for the last 8 days? Like, yeah, we've had that before. So it's like, it's important to, as soon as you're under contract, call the inspector,
funny?
Get it scheduled.
Is when we make the offer,
Yep.
I tell my buyers, all right, as soon as we get an acceptance, because of course I'm going to assume that everything's going to get accepted. Right?
Yep, that's it.
So that power of positive
You
thinking.
expect to win.
Yeah,
That's it.
exactly.
That's
Power of positive thinking, manifesting that stuff.
Yep.
Anyway, so I tell them the first option is going to be, we got to get that deposit within 24 hours, which my brokerage now does Deposit Link, which is the most amazing thing ever.
Okay.
They send you a link.
Convenient, simple.
Yeah, HCH, super easy, super secure. And then I ask them, before, like, tell me what your schedule is. What days and times are you available? I'm going to, if you're comfortable with it, let me know. Because I never say one, because I can't steer anybody to one person or another.
Yep.
Here's a couple of people. I've used Don and Mike and Chris a lot in the past.
There's your 3 options.
Exactly, right? Great in the past. They've done my investment property, my personal houses, but it's who you feel comfortable with. And some people have their own people, which is fine.
Yeah.
But if you want to use my people, let me know. I'm going to schedule it. I mean, how many times, like, hey, Amy, it's Mel, or Kathy, hey.
You want to make the transition as easy as possible for they're paying you.
Of course. And look, I do not want Dad the deal breaker at any inspection, but I always tell buyers, if Dad is going to be part of the process, have him come on showings.
Yeah.
And it has been so great doing that because I'd rather have them up front so they know. And then when the inspection comes, I say, invite Dad, invite Uncle Joe, invite Mom, invite Auntie Sue.
Whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Whoever you want that's going to help you feel comfortable with this. We're going to be there for a 2-hour period. So I want to make sure anyone you want to get in, I want you to get it in now.
Yep. And that's one thing, like, learning from Don when I was going through the whole training process, like, how do most people, like, you can be great at being an inspector, but if you can't communicate, it goes out the window. And I'm like, and that's a lot of professions.
There is one person that does not know how to communicate. And I've had 4 deals go south in, I think, 3 years on listings I've had, and I've resold them for more money, and it hasn't mattered. But it's just so crazy.
It's all the communication is key, delivery, and then when you get the house full of uncles, dads, this and that, if you come off as an asshole, like, they're gonna want to back out just because of you. Like, and it's all about the house, the buyer, and presenting that appropriately. And I think that's where, like, House Doctor, like, Don, he's the one that taught me and Chris. And then as we expand, it's gonna be the same thing. Like, here's the standard. This is what we do. This is how we communicate. This is what you do in this situation. And making sure it's across the board. Obviously, everybody delivers a little differently, but as long as it gets delivered in a reasonable manner,
correct,
and comes off properly, because some people you just build a rapport with right away on the inspection. It's like you can joke around with them, and like, and
some people want a little more serious, which is fine, and you can read the room though.
Exactly.
And one thing that I kind of was thinking about too with you coming on the podcast today was heating systems.
Yep.
I know even as a seasoned buyer out there, I still see heating systems I've never seen before. Can you tell us a little bit about the difference between gas and oil, forced air, forced water, steam, radiators, electric, good, bad, and indifferent?
Yep.
I know all of these things, but I'm talking, people are probably like...
Yeah, and that's where it's funny, because on inspections, we want to go over, because most people feel the same way.
Yeah.
So we want to go over the operation of the system, all this stuff. And I typically normally end the conversation with, you probably just forgot everything I said. YouTube it or call a heating technician. But most people, they don't know the difference between a boiler and a furnace. And that's most people, because it's just they turn the thermostat on and they have heat or AC.
Exactly.
Like, they don't need to know any of this stuff. And that's what's nice, at least nowadays, like, and working with a agent that has connections, stuff like that, you can provide other resources in those areas.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the inspection, we're going to operate that heating system the same way that you would the day you move in. We're going to turn the thermostat up. We're going to make sure it's operating properly. We use carbon monoxide detector, make sure it's burning properly. And then going over the full operation, each system is going to be a little different, or where shut-off valves are, different things. So we're going to explain safety features on the unit. Where's the service switch? Where's the secondary shut-off switch? Is there a firematic sensor? So that sensor would shut the unit down if
In case of a fire.
In case of a fire.
If there's a shut-off switch in the stairs.
Yep. So where the filter is, what size the filter is, this is what you're looking at. This is how often you should replace it. And a lot of people, when we say this one thing, a lot of people are kind of like, oh, I didn't think of that. It makes sense. But they make low, medium, and high grade filters where if you stick with the low and medium and change them out on the basis you're supposed to,
Which is?
Typically every 3 months.
That's what I was going to say, 3 months. That's what I thought.
Every 3 months if you're using the same ductwork for your heat and your AC.
Okay.
Because it's year round.
Makes sense.
If it's just heat, then heating season.
Okay.
Beginning, middle, should be good to go. But that's where you're going to learn all that on the inspection at the same time. And if you're not able to be present during the home inspection, we're still very detailed in the reports. And not that we're more detailed, because we're pretty detailed in general, but we're going to have arrows pointing to different things that you then can have in that report of like, this is this shut off, this is where the filter is. So obviously we'd rather you be on the inspection.
As a real estate agent, I always want the client to be at the home inspection. I have yet to have an experience where I represent a buyer and they're not there. On inspections where the client has not been present and the agent has FaceTimed or not FaceTimed and sent someone else, that deal has gone south. And it's just the most bizarre thing because, like you said, the delivery, the communication, the feeling in the room, you can feel if something's scary or not.
Or if they get a PDF that's 100 pages, that's like, and a lot of it is just disclosures because we have to cover our end.
It's overwhelming. Those inspection reports
crazy.
Are overwhelming when you get it on any house. And you open it up and you're like, as a first-time home buyer, you're like, I don't want to buy a house anymore. But then you're like, okay, well, I was there. He told me what I really, there's really 3 things out of the 56 things that are on the report that I actually have to do. He was just telling me that in 10 years I might have to do this, or I got to change the filter, or, I got to I got to hire a contractor to bust through the roof to get that vent out.
That's it. And that's where, like, you'll see a lot of the reports, like, we have our standards of practice that we follow. Certain things, like with the heating system, we cannot see the heat exchanger that's inside the unit.
Of course.
And no home inspector can.
No.
But that's something that we explain on the smaller writing that you see in the report. Everything's there, but that's what makes it longer. And where back in the day, Don was saying, like, handwriting this and that. You didn't have any of that. It was carbon copy. You could barely see the last one. Like, no pictures.
Seriously.
So that's the reason why it's so long. And then there's some houses are just
garbage.
That's it.
Like, I had this one listing, like, going back to the termite damage. The termite damage was all the way up into the attic.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen that? That was the one and only case in 20 years. And I remember Don was like, they still bought the house and they still made a killing on it when they sold it. But, I mean...
Because the termites went from the ground to...
Yes.
They don't just fly up there.
So that means, like, I remember. But we got a huge credit. They, like, repaired it. And, I mean, the house was fine. But I just remembered seeing Don's face about that.
Yep.
What is the worst termite one that you saw?
Termite, probably similar to, like you said, as Don went through and screwdriver goes through. You go over, screwdriver goes through. So many joist sills in the basement, just every main beam, like, and you obviously you don't want to create more damage than
what's
what
already
you need
there,
to,
of course.
But going through, it's like, all right, you can already tell your screwdriver's going to go through that. You're not going to hit, like,
especially if you see the mud tunnels everywhere.
Yeah,
That's
all over.
Scary.
But there was one time I popped in the attic, and 2 stories with attics.
I like it.
Just popped in my head quick. One was pop my head in. I turned to the right. And then I'm looking, I'm like, what is that? I see a big mound. I'm like, what is that? It was
carpenter ants.
Bird nest from the floor all the way to the ridge.
Stop it.
Big bird's nest. I'm not going in there.
Yeah.
Like, I looked around, but I'm like, if a bird pops out of there, and like ask anybody in my family, that's one, I don't like birds.
Oh.
Like, my cousin used to have one. I would go over his house. I didn't know it wasn't in the cage. Came flying. I just dropped to the floor. For some reason, birds, they should be outside. Like, not, I don't know, that's just me.
And houses I've shown with birds in it.
It's, what impresses me of the house is that I have a lot of cats and you don't know they have cats. I'm like, oh,
Yes, that
far
is
and few
that.
between.
I was just gonna say far and few
like,
between.
But I'm like, oh wow, like, oh, you have cats. All right,
Like,
cool.
oh my gosh, I didn't know you had cats until
But
I saw the litter
that's
box.
not the
But
norm.
that's I was
Not
gonna
the
say
norm.
most of the time you just smell cat pee. Oh, I said it.
And the other attic one was a pre-listing.
Mm-hmm.
So I pop in the attic and I hear a noise. And I'm like, ooh. And we're in the middle, I think it was Rehoboth, like in the middle of the woods. Like,
Yeah.
And so I shine my flashlight and then I see two big squirrels just like looking right at me eating. Like they were fat. And so I pop back out of the attic.
You're like,
And the home, because now it's the homeowner, it's not like a buyer. So I'm like, you have squirrels? And her reaction right away was, not again.
Like she already knew.
It
Like,
was-
hey, you think you could have warned me about the squirrels
Yeah,
in the attic?
she's like, this has been an ongoing thing for like 2 years.
You're like, thanks for
I'm
letting
like-
me know.
Yeah, are you feeding them? They're huge.
Like,
are you
what's
doing?
going on? She's like, yeah, I'm just throwing the nuts up there. I'm trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, but that was not crazy, but the reaction was crazier. Like,
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, so this is normal.
So you know. So you know about that. It's funny, Don did an inspection for a buyer once, and I have since sold this house. But I remember he went upstairs, and he was like, put a mask on and everything because it was bats. It was infested with bats, and the bats guana, so the bat poop or whatever, is not environmentally safe, I guess. So you have to have it professionally removed and all of that.
Only certain times of the year they allow that. And
It
everything.
was the biggest and most he had ever seen.
Yeah.
And it was in Gloucester. But I mean, that was like, I remember being like, oh my God, now we got to worry about bats. I'm like,
as a new agent, you're learning all
I
that.
know.
You're like, oh my
It's like
God.
now I gotta
Like,
know
I'm
about
still-
bats and bat guana. Like, what is that?
Yep.
It's just, and I think that's the thing. And just to touch base on the whole experience thing, with you doing over 1,000 inspections and me, being in real estate for 20 years, selling X amount of homes, you just learn this stuff by doing it.
Yep.
There's still so many new things that I come across, and on every inspection, on every transaction, there's always something new that
and that's
comes
why
along.
the training process with a home inspector is the requirements for the state. You have to do 100 inspections under a licensed inspector,
Which is a lot.
but you still don't
Know
there-
everything.
there's
I
so
know. There's
much.
so much
I
to
think
learn. I know.
I probably did, and my thought process was, Don has done this for, at the time, 15 years.
Yeah.
He knows his crap. He's busy. People like him. He's doing it the right way. I want to go on as many training inspections with him as I possibly can. I think I did like 400 inspections, just training before I went on my own, just because like I wanted to get as much information as he had.
You wanted to soak all the information up
Yeah.
like a sponge, and that's what's made you so great today as a home inspector, and as to why you are now the owner of House Doctor Home Inspection.
Yep.
But I'm going to back it up a little bit. I just want to kind of touch base about what's the difference between forced air and forced water baseboard.
So the forced air
For
is
heating.
going to be for the furnace.
Okay.
So the furnace pushes air throughout the house.
Okay. Through the ductwork.
Through the ductwork.
And
Yep.
then there's vents either underneath the floor or through the ceiling,
Exactly.
correct? Okay.
Yep. And then forced hot water is a boiler. So that boiler is heating up water that is in the pipes that you see along the baseboards, or they have hot water radiators.
The new radiators are actually kind of cool.
So, like
Some of them are.
They like if you have a high efficiency system, so you wouldn't see an oil high efficiency system.
No.
Oil is typically mid efficiency or so, but the ones that you see on the wall, those
The
that's
Navient
going to be
systems.
gas, propane. Those are going to be high efficiency systems. They use a plastic PVC pipe for the exhaust, so that's their chimney. But
Which is great.
yeah, and a lot of incentives switching over to that, and then even now with a lot of new construction, they're switching to heat pumps, so all
Yeah.
electric. So
I've seen those on a few new construction. They're
Yeah.
actually, I'm anti-electric
I
with
am
the
like-
baseboard because
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like my nasal passages or what, but I get gross if
Yeah.
I'm in an electric heat too long.
yeah, me personally, I like to be as much off the grid if you can. So like
Yeah.
I got oil at my house
I like
still.
that, yeah.
I had the option to switch to gas, and I was like, no,
Nope.
we're keeping oil.
That's very,
That's-
very, very uncommon.
Yeah, that's whether that's right, wrong, and different.
That's just your
It's-
own personal.
it's my house,
Yeah,
so-
exactly. You can do whatever you want.
But yeah, we see a lot of new construction switching over to that, and that system, it actually heats up a coil in the furnace. So like now it still has
Oh,
the
that's
ductwork.
so cool.
So
Okay.
that's one way of doing it.
That makes sense.
Then you see mini split systems, so the units on the walls.
What's your like I have at the coffee shop here.
Yeah.
What's your personal thoughts on the mini splits?
They come in handy when you need them, as far as you, like my house was built in the 1920s. I don't have central air, I don't have anything like that. So it's cheaper, more convenient to put the mini splits on the wall. Now I got AC in all the rooms that I need to.
Yeah.
Cheaper than running metal ductwork, or I got quotes
And you don't
for
have the
both.
space because
space
in the
too.
older houses they don't have as many closets. So where are you going to put that
Exactly.
ductwork?
And I got quotes for both, and the mini splits were actually half the price.
I believe it.
Still didn't go through with it just because I was like, all right, this isn't our forever home. Window, I can get a couple nice window ACs, and we'll deal with that for now. But
Yeah.
that's, again, personal.
See me, I'm
like,
bougie.
I
got central air for the first time in 2006 in my condo,
Yep.
and every home I've bought,
Oh, yeah.
I've added the central air if it wasn't already there.
if we've never had it in any of our houses yet.
So that's why. So it's like
So
until
that's-
you have it,
It's like a dishwasher, like without
or a garage,
yeah.
you know,
So
that I just
our
put
first,
stuff in.
Our first house, we had a garage. We've never had a garage again.
Wow.
I know, it's one, like,
I mean, it's a stuff collector. I've never put my car in a garage, and I just, I just put stuff in it. I mean,
Yep.
look, there's stuffed people and there's non-stuffed people, and they usually date.
I
Are you the stuffed person or the minimalist?
I'm minimalist.
Okay.
I tell my wife, hey, let's go down to the basement. Whatever we didn't use in the last year.
But my grandmother,
No.
that's me. It's my grandmother's
outta here.
furniture with a busted leg, but still, I need to
It's
hold on to it.
sentimental.
Dude, I'm
That's
the
it.
worst with that.
We did an inspection, and it was a big, I forgot if there was maybe 10, 12 units in this multifamily. And it's funny when people try to justify like how their house,
Looks.
whether it's dirty or not clean
Yeah.
or whatever, like people justify it, and it's your house, like you do what you want. But we walk into this house and it's like hoarder situation. And the guy's
And that's
like,
tough to inspect.
you can only see what you can see.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough.
But the tenant was there, and
Because the tenants have to be there because you're going to steal their stuff, right? It's like I sell $1 million homes and they leave, and I can have free range in the house, but
Yep.
in your $600 apartment, I can't.
And
I'm
that's
like,
what makes me not want to have a rental property again. Is
single family.
I see
Single
the-
family rentals.
where we
slow and
go.
steady.
I'm like, I don't know if I could deal with the tenants.
know.
Like, but some of them are great. But this one, he was trying to justify the hoarder situation. He goes, sorry about all the stuff. I'm just getting organized. Like,
Liar.
we came here from a bigger single family. So I was like, how long ago was that? He said 15 years.
You're like, you ain't working on shit, dude.
I remember just looking at the agent.
15 years.
Because I'm deaf in one ear. So, like, I'm like, did I hear that right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Did
like,
I?
He said 15 years.
Wow.
Justifying it.
That is
Justifying it.
crazy, but and it's funny how you say that. The cleanliness factor, and
Yeah.
I always say this, especially to new agents, is you can't judge somebody on their space because
Yep.
some people grow up in this type of space, and
normal.
some people grow up in this type of space, and everybody has a different cleanliness factor. You know, I mean. I have 2 big dogs. Guess what? I have to vacuum every
Oh,
day to not have, but I don't. Like,
Yep.
if I don't vacuum for 2 days, it's like there's just black dog fur everywhere.
Yep.
So if somebody were to like pop in, but I mean, someone's coming over
Yeah,
your
you're
house.
selling the house.
Dude, when people like use me as a listing agent, and then all of a sudden they're like, then you get there and the buyers are like, why is it so dirty? And I'm like, this is their version of clean. It's crazy,
Yeah.
crazy,
And
crazy.
Each their own. It's their house. But when you're trying to present it to a new potential buyer, you have to do certain things that you typically wouldn't do.
Wouldn't do.
If you want to get top. For me, like when I've bought houses and stuff, we always joke around, me and my wife, like our house is always ready to sell. Like if
Just
we
in
need,
case.
just in case,
Just in case.
we want to sell. Like we try to keep it. And now having a 1.5-year-old daughter, it's like,
Oh.
me and her are both at least on the same page. We're like, when she goes to bed, we clean up.
Yeah, it's like tidy over here, tidy over here, and it's so hard with a 1.5-year-old.
And you can't just play with one toy. You
No,
have
of
to
course
play
you
with all
got
of them.
to play with all of them. I mean, no, I know, and whenever I go to sell homes where people have children of like any age, and they're like, I'm so sorry about stuff. I'm like, You have a family.
Yep.
I mean, you're living in the home.
Yep.
There's a difference between clutter and hoard.
Oh,
and
100%.
it's significant.
Yep.
You can 100%
Yep,
tell.
exactly.
I'll never forget, I got this referral for a house over here, right outside of Patuxent Village. And it was on a really cute street. And the guy's like, my mother's going to sell the house. It's not going to be a lot of money.
Yep.
There's currently a hole in the roof. A squirrel's getting in. So when your squirrel story made me laugh.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, it's got to be some sort of hoarder situation.
Yeah.
Not thinking of that much. I show up, Mike. Paths. Like it was paths. So everything was above my height to the ceiling. And there was a path to the living room with one little chair. And then even on the stairs was all stuff on it. A path upstairs.
Yep.
And you can tell she never went upstairs because I couldn't even get into the other rooms. And the bathroom, even, there was like a path to the bathroom, and then the canned goods upon canned goods upon canned goods from like 1972, 1968. I just felt so bad for this woman, and the son was helping, and he couldn't help her. He did everything he could, but we sold it.
People ask, they're like, would you buy this house? I get that question.
For the right price? I will buy anything, Mike, for the right price.
Exactly. And because we can't answer that question as
That's
inspectors.
a lie, except for a mobile home.
Yeah.
But usually you can't rent those, so that's why.
Yep. And that's where so many people they ask, they're like just as a friend, like if I was a friend, like would you buy this house? And like we can't answer that. We're unbiased opinion.
Exactly.
Going in, showing you the facts of the house, but like people buy houses that need complete knockdowns if the money's right, if this makes sense, if that makes sense. So like we can never speak on your behalf of is it worth it for you, because I don't know your situation.
Yeah, you don't know how much money they have in the bank. You don't know what their loan's going to be.
Exactly.
You don't have any of that information.
Yep.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, you are there to provide a service for the whole entity of the home.
Exactly.
So, for example, when Mike comes in, he'll do the exterior, he'll look at the siding, whether it's vinyl sided, clapboard, shingles. A lot of us, especially in New England, we like the shingle look, right? Especially if you are, like older homes. But for efficiency, the vinyl is great to keep
upkeep and everything.
Upkeep and efficiency. It's really great.
Cedar impression now.
I know, with the vinyl is really nice. That's what I have on my house currently right now. And, so he'll make, kind of check that out. The other thing is funny, like years ago, I remember doing a home inspection and Don was like, this vinyl's painted, but it was the type of vinyl you couldn't paint over.
Yep.
Now I know they make vinyl that you can paint over at some point in time.
If you got the correct paint.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
And so they'll go over the siding, they'll go over the roofing, they'll go over the flashing, they'll go over the ridge vents, the gutters, the downspouts. How important are downspouts? We live in the Ocean State. I mean,
most people's question, like, does the basement get water? And a lot of people, that's one of their biggest concerns. Most of the time, it's if the house has clogged gutters, downspouts are pouring right at the foundation, the land grade and slope around the house is flat, or slope to the house. So a lot of those factors play heavily into if that basement gets water or not.
And I love that question because it's like, it's the Ocean State. We live in the Ocean State in Rhode Island. So guess what? 50% of our homes are going to get water in the basement. Some of them were built in the 1700s. They have fieldstone foundations. Guess what fieldstone is? It's rock on top of rock on top of rock. And guess what comes in? The rainwater. So it's not something to be fearful of, but it's easy to rectify if you do the right thing. But the other thing is we're getting more rain. Look at 2024.
Yeah.
We had more rain in 2024 than we've ever seen or that's ever been recorded. And there's places in the middle of Cranston, in Warwick, that's not even close to the water. Like the Warwick Mall in 2010 was underwater.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody could have ever called that.
Freak circumstances.
So no matter what, even if somebody has never had water in their basement, my parents' house right off Airport Road, it was built in 1986. They never had, 1980. They bought it in 1986. They'd never had water in the basement. 2010, it came up from the ground. So you don't know. So you could have an inspector go. They could have never been water in the basement, and you could get it the following year. But if you take the necessary precautions, like you're saying, the grading of the land, the downspouts, clean gutters, All of these things are regular maintenance on homes. And I think a lot of times right now, some people are not maintaining their homes, because that's the number one thing I see is deferred maintenance as to why people get less money for their house.
100%.
So I think I did a pretty good job of the exterior. And then in the interior, usually you'll start in the basement, right? We'll go through the, we let the electrician do the electrical portion now in 2025. And then you go through the heating system. And one thing I love that you guys do too, because another thing in the state of Rhode Island is we have different types of plumbing, right? So it's PVC, it's copper, it's the PEX, right? So there's so many different types. And I remember I had a home inspection, Ki-Tech Plumbing.
Yep. Orange.
You remember hearing that though, right? The 90s, am I saying it right, Ki-Tech?
Yeah, Ki-Tech.
Yeah. And my people got out because of the fittings. They
would fail a lot sooner than they should.
Yes.
And there's other brands, so like I believe off the top of my head, one of the fittings, it's like F108. Like that's one of the fittings that there was a recall on where it fails sooner. Different brand, not Ki-Tech. But as we go through, we check, we look for these things, and we're going around I would say every inch, but again, hoarder situation, different situations, clutter, just normal stuff. Like we can only
see flat ceilings that you can't access in the basement.
Finished basements. So like it's a visual inspection, but we're going through, we're running all the plumbing in the house, going back down into the basement, making sure there's no leaks. If there are, we note it and keep moving forward. But yeah, we're gonna check all the plumbing out, the electrical. We can still do in Mass and Connecticut.
Oh, that's great.
So in Mass, Connecticut, we can still do the full electrical.
Perfect.
So it's just it'll be Rhode Island, but yeah, we go through as much as we possibly can visually see.
And one of the other things in the older houses, I love that you own an older home, right? Because I love that era of the 20s and 30s, just beautiful architecture. And the cast iron pipes. So a lot of times of these sewer pipes have never been replaced, and they're cast iron, and they basically rot from the inside out. So you'll have those cysts, they're called, right? On the outside, so you'll see them. So when I take people through houses and I just happen to see, I always, full disclosure, I am not a professional plumber. I am not a professional home inspector. I am not a professional anything, but I have two eyes and I'm going to show you this because I have heard that this can be dangerous. So now they're like, okay, we love everything about the house, but if all we have to change out is this PVC and it's not currently leaking now, then okay. So when they get to the home inspection and you say, look at this sewer pipe with these cysts, they'll be like, oh, that's right. We were already prepared for that.
Exactly.
So we completely understand. So I think that's key too.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
And like you said, like stuff can happen after the home inspection. For instance, Don did my inspection of the house I'm currently living in, and then 2 years later, the main waste line started leaking into the basement, and it was cast iron in the wall, and my wife was running water upstairs. I'm in the basement and I see it coming down.
You're like, oh.
So ripped open the wall, replaced it, but it's something Don couldn't have, no inspector could have seen that, predicted that. But it's old.
They'll crack inside too.
Cracked. Yep,
I had that happen at a two-family in West Warwick, and I was like, this is all wet. Got to check it out. And that's what he did. He opened it up, and he's like, there's a crack in the sewer pipe, so we have to replace the sewer pipe. But now the new owner is safe and everything's fine. You had it repaired, and I mean, it is what it is, and that's why we have insurance too. But make sure you look at those insurance riders and what they're protecting, because they're changing a lot right now, and just the different things that I'm seeing. Even for me, I just had my insurance rate on one of my houses go up $1,000. It's a 952 square foot ranch. It went up $1,000. But it's only because of the proximity to the water. Even though I'm like a million feet above sea level, it doesn't matter because the wind that's coming off of the water, and I'm not even on the water. Like I'm like across the street, up the street. Like I mean, but again, you just want to make sure that you're aware of all these things. So once they go through the basement, they'll go through the main level. You guys open and close every window. You make sure if they're the tilt-in windows, they tilt in. You make sure if they're the Anderson crank ones, you can crank them out. They go into the attic for a visual inspection. You just really go through all the main components of the home. And I always tell people to prep any questions that they have. So I know you and I kind of talked about this before we sat down, but you have invested in real estate in the past, and you have since sold your rental properties. So, being a landlord and being an inspector and an investor, what are a few things you can tell young people that are looking to become investors? Because let's be real, we all want to invest in real estate, right?
Yep. And when I bought our first investment property, I wasn't an inspector at that point yet.
Okay.
So, but I knew the whole house hacking stuff like that. I hated that. That bill is not going away. So if I can have somebody else pay it,
great,
awesome. So that was my mentality. We got it before the market went skyrocketed. We got it. It was updated. I think we paid like $290 for a ready to go 2-family.
That's amazing.
And
you can't touch that now.
Only owned it
Double.
for 2 years. Walked away with a good amount of money because in my head all I could see was that one figure, and I couldn't wrap my head around like rent. Like, oh, will somebody like always pay? Like in my head I'm like, I wouldn't do that. So why would other people? But some people want to rent, and others they just can't get to the
afford to it.
Exactly. So the kind of being short-sighted during the whole process and not knowing, because now as an inspector, I'm in so many houses.
You know what to look for.
I know what to look for, and I see the one that we had, and we're like, oh,
that was so good, and we didn't even know it. You didn't
even
know it.
So, like, if I could go back, I would have
hold
kept
on to that.
it.
Yeah.
But you live and learn,
and I'm sure you used that money for something else. That was.
Oh yeah, and that actually helped me build up enough to buy out the home inspection company as well.
I think that was a smart
So
move.
it's not like I just blew it. But real estate gave us, and the whole time we were living in one of the units, I remember my wife like, I don't want to live here. I don't want to live here. I don't want to live here. And
I'm with her. I gotta say.
And once we sold it, I showed her the check, and she goes,
okay.
Oh, it wasn't bad.
Let's do it again.
Like, I'm like, wasn't bad. You complained the whole time. But the end
I would
result,
be her.
Yeah, 100%. And like, if we want to get back into it, our focus is on the business right now.
Yep, I think that's
but
smart.
Eventually, when we get back into it, I just don't want to live there.
Yes.
But it is such an easy, convenient way to start. Like, and that's where we literally the week that we got married, we got back from our honeymoon, we listed our single family and then bought a multifamily.
Oh wow.
And that was like, wasn't really the plan, but it was my plan.
Yeah. She just didn't know it yet.
So that's how we got our jump start, and that's compounded with other properties and everything like that. So it's a great overall investment to really get into.
See, I give you a lot of credit for living in the multi, because I have been lucky enough to never have to live in a multi-family situation. I've like rented single families with friends, and I had a condo, which was the worst experience of my life, but that's a whole other story for another time.
Yep.
And, you know, I've since bought a single family as my primary residence, and I have a couple of single family rentals.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, you know, you should go buy, you know, a 3-family, a 5-family, a 10-unit or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? I love single family rentals because I rent them to families, and one of them I have a family in, right?
Yep.
And they absolutely love it, and they treat it like it's their own. They'll only call me when there's like, I say when there's a real problem, but sometimes there's not. You know, like one of them was, you know, oh, the toilet's clogged, nothing's going down. So, of course, I had my plumber go there, and he's like, Mel, I've told you 1,000 times over to tell people not to throw those flushable wipes down the toilet. Okay, so here we are again. Never throw anything besides toilet paper down the toilet.
Oh, yeah.
Again, only toilet paper goes in the toilet, please. Please. I can't, and I even tell people that when they buy their house. I said, look, put a nice cute little sign. You know, only toilet paper. I mean, how many restaurants and different things you go into, and they say that, especially west of 295.
Because they spent a bunch of money on a plumber coming multiple times and they're sick of it, so they put the sign.
Exactly, and those flushable things, they're just not flushable, even if you're on sewers. So they cleaned that out, and then they called me another time because their heat wouldn't go above 67, and I was like, that's weird. Yeah. You know, and so I called my investor, and I'm like, Matt, like, what could it be? He's like, check the filter. I'm like, you're so smart. So I go by the house and I go in the basement thinking, you know, and how cool I am, right? To even know where the filter is on the heating system. Yes, that did. I did feel cool. So I push it open and I pull it out.
Yep.
I think it had been like 7 years since it had been changed.
A little longer than 3 months.
It was, and the previous tenants had a cat at one point in time. It was just cat hair. Yeah. So one thing is, blame me, the landlord. I should have changed it when the people moved out. Yep. Okay, so I take full responsibility. But I mean, I guess I just quote unquote assumed that my other tenants would. So I immediately went to Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever it was, and I grabbed a multi-pack. Yep. And I gave it to him and I said, look, I said, you're going to have to change this out every 3 months. I showed him how to do it. And, you know, I said, after that, you're going to have to do it yourself. If you run into problems with size or anything, just let me know. I'll provide it to you because it's costs so much more to have to fix the heating system than to do that. Of course, I was sweating, right? But I mean,
thinking the worst.
And when I renovated that house, I did central air and heat. Okay. So I knew. And that's the one thing I have to say about single families is the set it and forget it. I just absolutely love having it. I mean, look, I'm not making a ton of money on the back end. I mean, if I had a 5-unit, 10-unit, yeah, sure, I'd be raking in cash. But at the same time, for me, I'm a true believer in slow and steady wins the race.
And that's what's nice with real estate. You have so many paths. You can, like, I have a buddy, he does midterm Airbnb rentals. Like, and that's like his niche. Like, and he's killing it. Mm-hmm. Like, you have so many different options that you can do. And that's kind of the one way that I looked at the home inspection business, where like that's my into real estate. Yeah. And kind of compounding from there. But there's so many avenues that you can choose from and pick and go in.
And there's never a bad time to buy real estate. It's as long as you're in it for the long game, you know, you'll always come out on top. Always. I mean, even you and your wife looking back saying, oh man, we didn't realize what a great multi we had at the time. So with that being said, before we wrap up, I love to end my podcast episodes with real estate horror stories. Right. So I'd love to hear your top 2 or 3 horror stories that you can think of, and then I'll tell you a Don one.
Yeah. Horror stories would be...
So, like, let me give you an example. I had Don come to an inspection, and the seller was adamant about staying at the property. You love that when that happens, right? That's when you show up and the seller's there. Yeah. So the seller, like, half built the house and installed the septic and all of that just to make it even better, right? So, you know, and I pre-warned Don a little bit that they were going to be there because roles reverse, I'd want somebody to do that for me. So he shows up and he, you know, opens the septic and starts putting water in it, and he's going around, and then he comes out and he said something about it not passing, and the guy lost it. He ran right, and you know, Don's not a super big guy, but he's like the nicest guy, and he's very calm, and he's got that, you know, level voice. And the guy he was a smaller guy, ran up, rah, 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 screaming in Don's face. I was mortified. I honestly didn't know what to do, Mike. I was like, and Don was just like, you can take it up with me afterwards. Let me just finish the inspection. Da-da-da. And the guy's like, no, you don't know what you're doing. Screaming at him. But he handled it so well. And he did finish the inspection. I was able to get the seller to go to the other side of the yard or whatever. But I'm pretty sure that was an insurance claim for Don at some point in time. And it wasn't fair because it was like this guy was harassing him the whole time. And I felt bad for the buyers, and I felt bad for Don.
There'll never be a shortage of those people.
Oh, my gosh, it's crazy.
They're out there dealing with public. You're going to come across them.
And this is why when you deal with seller clients, that's why they hire a professional. And so the professional is there while the inspection's going on.
So I would think a horror story would be, and again, I have a theme with animals.
You don't do well with animals.
No, it's like, I think it blows
Cats and dogs, maybe you do well with.
This is a cat story.
Oh, this is great.
But like, I think it just blows me away about how some things play out, like with animals. I'm like, they asked if I was allergic to cats, and I was like, I am, but I won't touch them. That's fine. Like, I'm not like it. They're like, well, I'm like, are you gonna force me to touch the cat? And
like what's going on?
There's this a lot. I go, all right.
I think one of their couple cats, no problem.
there was over 50 cats in this house.
Shut
Hands down.
up.
Everywhere. On cabinets, in cabinets, under
In
table.
the house?
Yeah.
50?
Under the table, on the table,
I can't
in
believe
the
they weren't
tub, in the
reported.
sink. Like, yeah. Like, and I.
It wasn't in Warwick, was it?
No,
Okay.
Woonsocket.
Oh.
So it's like. I grew up in Woonsocket, so I can say that.
I didn't, but I could say it.
But it was the whole. The buyer's looking at me like.
50? Why would they want the house?
I don't think they went in that unit when they looked at the house.
Oh, it was a multi.
Yeah.
So they
So
were hoarding cats.
It was like the first floor was all it was vacant. So like that's what they were showing.
Oh,
All
yeah.
the pictures look nice.
Gotta love that.
Yeah.
We're not going to show you the 50
50
cats.
cats.
So did you go in the unit?
Yeah,
Did you die?
I did not. I
Wow,
put a
obviously.
mask on.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
And just
Was there one litter box? Were there multiple litter boxes?
I
Oh my
couldn't even
gosh.
see a litter box.
Ew.
And there was babies, there was big cat, like there was like it was National Geographic up in there.
Wow, it was
cats.
like cat sanctuary there. Ooh.
Yeah. So that was I was like,
Yeah, you know how you definitely do not have good luck with cat
The
with
animals
the
and-
animals, birds,
so-
cats,
but, like,
squirrels.
in so many houses and so many going throughout the whole house, most people's career, you go to your house, you go to your family's house, like we are in so many houses, like so you see a lot of things.
And that's why I always tell people, I'm like, look, when we go in houses, look, I do this all the time. I go in people's houses, I open up the doors, I open up the closets, the cabinets. I'm like, hey, show me around your house. Like, you know.
'cause it's normal.
It's normal, right? For
Yep.
me. But people get so nervous to do that. That's why I really
Yeah.
kind of try to push them. Like, look, you want to see, does that door squeak? Does it actually shut?
Yep.
Nothing irritates me more is than when doors don't like click shut. I don't know why. I have these weird
They'll be
things.
on our report.
Like literally, like it's the weird things about it. But I mean, and that's an easy fix. You just change
Yeah.
out the knob or whatever. But yeah, I mean, 50 cats.
At least.
That is insane. Wow. So, in closing, what would you say is the most important thing for any buyer out there or any seller that's looking to do a pre-list in regards to having a home inspection?
I think it would be one, obviously, to get a home inspection.
Yes,
But
that's a given.
That would be like the number one. But it ultimately comes down to, and I think home inspection, the industry it's different as far as a plumber, electrician. When you get work done to your house, you meet the electrician, the plumber first. They give you a quote, you approve it. So you
never
meet
thought
them
about
multiple
that.
times. Buyers, most people don't meet the home inspector until they're on site.
You're right.
So I think that's where social media comes in play big time with a home inspection industry, where you can go on our Facebook, on our Instagram, everything, my personal stuff, and see who I am as a person, who the company is. And you just want to make sure you're getting a reputable business or a company in there doing the proper job that's thorough, that's going to give you all the information that you need. And that would be one tip, is like search social media, search reviews, search those types of things of, did all these other people have great experiences in the past, and utilizing your agent in facilitating that, because again, you're in that industry, you're in the business, you know what questions to ask. When the first time home buyer, they don't even know most questions to ask. So it's surrounding yourself with
the right
top
people.
whether it's your loan officer, your agent, the home inspector. So I think that's key in success in any area of life. But when you're buying your house, like, surround yourself with those people, because they're going to ultimately make or break your full experience.
And I almost feel like word of mouth is even more important in today's flashy,
Yep.
this, that, da, 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 da. And it's
Yep.
like, if you know somebody that's used somebody and they
Yep.
come, highly recommended and so on and
100%.
so forth,
100%.
because at the end of the day, you, the buyer, you're paying for this. You want to make sure that, whoever's going in there, and look, sometimes there's things you can't get to and whatever, and sometimes things happen, but that's like even with a car or anything you do
Yep.
in life. But I really just can't stress enough and how important it is to have the inspection. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
understand why you would buy a $500,000 house without having a home inspection, but that's just me. And then to make sure that the person that is, because, I'll never forget, I had this one, and this was the worst multifamily I think I've ever saw. Well, that's probably a lie. It's one of the worst, okay? So a lot of shitty multifamilies.
Yep.
This one, I dubbed it the cat pee house. Okay.
There we
The
go.
buyer's agent was not there, but he sent another agent.
Wonder why.
And Well, he doesn't show up to any of it, but that's a whole nother story for another time. And the agent was walking up the stairs and goes, I'm allergic to cats. I can't go in that unit.
Yeah.
And I said, no problem. And the smell was so bad, he was getting all red. He couldn't even handle, because it was just the pee. And I think they were just letting the cat pee like on the hardwood floors.
Everywhere.
And you know how the hardwood floors like soak it
Yeah.
up. But let me tell you, the inspector was just one of those people that you could tell had never held a hammer. And, look, I'm not expecting, Tim the Tool Man, to show up, or Bob the Builder or what have you to show up. But, I mean, you should have some knowledge. And nothing drives me more crazy is than when people try to act like an electrician and a plumber and everything. And, of course, it must have been a day for me, right? And I was like, just so you know, he's not a professional plumber and, electrician. Like, literally, I was, like, so angry. And then I remember he took the moisture meter. He's like, this is a $650 moisture meter. I'm like, dude, stop it. And then he pointed at something. He's like, this came in at a 5. And it was like, I Googled it because I'd like text my seller and he's like, that's bullshit. And so I Googled it and it was like anything under 15 is just the moisture in the air. And for an inspector not to know that, I mean, come on. So it's like some people I just feel are out there to get a second or a third inspection and so on and so forth. Whereas I feel as though you, Don and Chris, go through the house and say, hey, this is the house, this is what it is, and if you have any questions in the future, and I know so many clients that have called afterwards just to get clarification on stuff, and you guys are more than willing to share your knowledge.
For sure.
So, in closing, is there anything else you want to add today, Mike?
That should be it. We covered a lot.
I know. I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And again, Mike Sweeney, owner of House Doctor Home Inspection. If you need a home inspector, Mike and his crew, Don and Chris, they're absolutely amazing. They do single family, multifamily, commercial,
we do.
Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. And again, if you have any questions, you can go right on the website. They're very, very, very reasonable for all of their services that they provide too. So thanks again, Mike, for stopping by today. And again, in closing, thanks for listening to today's episode of Coffee Talk with Mel, coming from the Coffee Grinder in Warwick, Rhode Island at 961 Namquid Drive. Thanks again. Have a great day.